It's a century to the day since Russia's October Revolution. 100 years ago, Vladimir Lenin and his Bolsheviks seized power to found their communist state. These people are marching through central Moscow to celebrate that, but a lot has changed.
То коммунизма не победить. Он обязательно будет. Только год я вам назвать не смогу.
For 70 years in the Soviet Union, Lenin's revolution was celebrated on a grandiose scale as an event that heralded the triumph of communism around the world. On the year of its centenary, though, the commemorations are muted. The Kremlin has indicated it wants them to be low-key, and few Russians in any case are eager to take part.
In Soviet times, this anniversary would have been marked with massive parades. Here you can see this march has been squeezed right up against the walls here. This is the Russian parliament. There's almost no space for the Communist Party here to march.
It's a far cry from 100 years ago in St. Petersburg where the revolution unfolded. Russia's then capital had been in upheaval for months. Lenin took advantage of the chaos to seize power.
100 years ago, the Bolsheviks staged their uprising here in St. Petersburg, firing from this fortress where I'm standing onto the Winter Palace behind me. It's an event that changed the world, but today's Russia doesn't seem to want to mark it.
The Tsar Nicholas II had already been toppled by an uprising in February. The Bolsheviks were targeting the Provisional Government, a group of liberal ministers who had lost control in the capital. Unlike how later Bolshevik films like this by Sergei Eisenstein showed it, though, there was virtually no fighting.
When the Bolsheviks broke into the Winter Palace on the night of the revolution, they found that most of the defenders had already fled. The Provisional Government was holed up in a dining room over here. The soldiers burst in, shouted, "You're all under arrest."
Lenin's victory meant Soviet rule for 70 years. It brought industrialization and education to Russia, but also terror and mass repression. Lenin's state is gone now, but Lenin is still everywhere in modern Russia. Most towns still have a statue. And he himself remains embalmed on Red Square, a symbol of a part of the Soviet past the Kremlin prefers not to touch. For today's Kremlin, the revolution is now an inconvenient holiday. On the one hand, Vladimir Putin's rule is increasingly based on venerating the Soviet past, but on the other, the Kremlin has little desire to celebrate revolutions. Harder still, Putin has surrounded himself with symbols of Russia's imperial past, trying to link himself to the Tsars toppled by the revolution. Over the weekend, almost 400 anti-Putin activists were arrested trying to hold unsanctioned rallies. Protesters in St. Petersburg last month were shouting, "Down with the Tsar." So the Kremlin is largely sitting out the centenary.
Vladimir Putin has said that he hopes the centenary will draw a line under the revolution, and it's true that for many Russians it has faded long into the past. But with the opposition smothered and power again centered in one man in the Kremlin, Lenin's era doesn't always feel so far away.